They laughed at Earth's gentle training, until the human instructor broke a 5G combat arena with one throw. So there we were, 3 weeks before the semester started, sitting in the Academy's main auditorium for the annual pre-term briefing, 240 cadets from 37 different worlds, all eager to prove they're the toughest species in the galaxy. You know the type. Puffed up chest plates, aggressive posturing, that wonderful mix of youth and stupidity that makes teaching combat both entertaining and exhausting. The briefing was standard procedure, really. We'd cycle through combat footage from each member world's training facilities, give the cadets a taste of what they'd be learning, maybe humble a few of them before they stepped onto the mats. Everything went smoothly at first. The Drogar footage got respectful nods. Their striking techniques are legitimately impressive. The Keltharian gravity resistance drills made a few cadets shift uncomfortably in their seats. Good. Fear is healthy. Even the Thoraxian multi-limb coordination exercises earned some appreciative clicks and whistles. Then we got to Earth. Oh, sweet cosmic irony. The moment that footage started playing, I knew we were in trouble. Not because the techniques looked dangerous. No. Because they looked, and I'm trying to be diplomatic here, pathetically simple. The first clip showed 2 humans in what they called a dojo, which apparently translates to training hall, though it looked more like a padded room for the mentally unstable. They wore these loose white uniforms, tied with colored belts, bowing to each other like they were at some formal ceremony. Then they started sparring, if you could even call it that. Slow, deliberate movements, gentle grabs, carefully controlled throws where both participants seemed more concerned about not hurting each other than actually winning. The laughter started in the back rows. A Thoraxian cadet named Grexel, built like a tank with an attitude to match, was the first to crack. His mandibles clicked in amusement so loud it echoed through the auditorium. Then others joined in, Keltharians rumbling with deep chuckles, Viridians hissing their equivalent of giggles. Even the usually stoic Drogars couldn't suppress their snorts. Is this a combat demonstration or a mating ritual? Someone shouted from the middle section. More laughter. I should have shut it down right there. Should have reminded them that every species has value. That different doesn't mean inferior. All that proper instructor wisdom. But here's the embarrassing truth. I was smirking too, standing there at the podium, watching humans gently roll each other onto padded mats. I couldn't help but think the same thing they were thinking. The second clip didn't help matters. This one featured what the file labeled as Lieutenant Kendra Voss, Earth Defense Force, certified instructor in multiple combat disciplines. She stood in the center of a training mat, explaining something about leverage and body mechanics to a group of human trainees. She was average height by human standards, maybe 1.7 meters, lean build, no visible combat augmentations, no natural armor plating like Keltharians, no extra limbs like Thoraxians, no reinforced bone structure, no venom sacs, no enhanced sensory organs, just soft skin, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a calm expression that suggested she'd never faced real danger in her life. She demonstrated what she called a hip throw, grabbed her training partner by the uniform, turned her hip into his center mass, and gently, so very gently, guided him over and onto the mat. He landed softly, rolled, stood back up. They bowed again. The whole thing took maybe 5 seconds and looked about as threatening as a light breeze. My hatchlings practice rougher than that, a Drogar cadet called out. The entire auditorium exploded with agreement. Earth's gravity is only 1.0 standard, another voice added. Of course their training looks weak. They probably can't handle real force. I pulled up Earth's planetary data on the display screen, partly to continue the briefing, partly because I was curious myself. Moderate gravity, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, temperate climate zones, no major predators that could threaten an organized human settlement. They called it a garden world in the files. Pleasant, safe, boring. All right, settle down, I finally said, though I was still grinning. Every world contributes to the galactic defense curriculum. We'll be covering Earth combat techniques in week 7 of the interspecies module. Can we skip that week? Grexel shouted. Looks like a waste of training time. More laughter. More agreement. More cadets convinced they could waltz through Earth's combat certification without breaking a sweat. Tell you what, I said, making a decision I'd regret for the rest of my career. If anyone thinks Earth training is too easy, you're welcome to volunteer for the demonstration when their instructor arrives. Every single hand in that auditorium shot up. Every single one. I chuckled, shook my head, moved on to the next world's footage. In the back of my mind, though, a tiny voice whispered a warning I should have listened to. If Earth's military thought these techniques were worth teaching, Maybe, just maybe there was something we were missing, but I ignored that voice. After all, I was Torben Yak, 16 cycles of teaching experience, expert in 43 combat systems from across the galaxy. What could some soft-skinned human from a garden world possibly teach me? Yeah, famous last thoughts, right? 3 weeks flew by faster than a quantum jump, and before I knew it, there I was standing at the entrance to Arena 7, waiting for our guest instructor from Earth. I'd prepared the standard welcome protocol, arranged for translator compatibility, even made sure the environmental controls were set to human comfortable parameters, 1.0 G, 22 degrees Celsius, standard atmosphere mix. Honestly felt like I was setting up a vacation resort rather than a combat training facility. The transport shuttle landed right on schedule, because apparently humans are punctual if nothing else, and out stepped Lieutenant Kendra Voss. In person she was even less impressive than the footage suggested, maybe 1.7 meters tall, probably 70 kilograms if you rounded up generously, wearing a simple gray uniform with minimal rank insignia. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, dark brown streaked with a few strands of silver that suggested she'd seen some years. Her skin was that pale tan color humans get from moderate sun exposure, no scarring, no visible augmentations, no combat tattoos or ritual markings. She carried a single duffel bag over one shoulder like she was heading to a weekend retreat, not a military academy filled with the galaxy's most aggressive species. When she spotted me, she smiled, this easy, relaxed expression that made her eyes crinkle at the corners, and walked over with the casual confidence of someone completely unaware they were entering a facility where cadets regularly hospitalized each other during sparring matches. Instructor Yak, she said, extending her hand in that bizarre human greeting ritual. I took it, careful not to crush her fragile bones, and she shook firmly, not aggressive, just present. Kendra Voss, thanks for having me. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy, I replied, keeping my tone professional. Your quarters are prepared and we've scheduled your first session for tomorrow morning. 0900 hours Arena 3. Sounds perfect. She adjusted the bag on her shoulder. I saw the cadet roster. Looks like a good mix of species. Should be educational. Educational. She said it like she was planning a field trip to a museum, not stepping into a combat arena with 200 cadets who'd spent 3 weeks convinced they could mop the floor with her. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The next morning came with the usual pre-training chaos. Cadets filing into Arena 3, chattering in a dozen languages, placing informal bets on who'd get chosen for the demonstration, who'd score the first takedown, how long before the human instructor tapped out. Grexel was holding court in the center of a group of Thoraxians, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he explained, in excruciating detail, exactly how he planned to gently demonstrate the superiority of multi-limb grappling. I called the room to attention as Kendra entered. She'd changed into loose black pants and a fitted gray shirt, both made from some synthetic material that looked comfortable and completely unsuitable for combat. No padding, no reinforcement, nothing. She walked to the center of the arena mat, unhurried, observing the cadets with calm interest. Good morning, she said, her voice carrying easily despite not being particularly loud. I'm Lieutenant Kendra Voss. I'll be your guest instructor for Earth combat methodologies. Before we start, I want to be clear about something. What you're going to learn isn't flashy, it isn't complicated, and it probably won't look impressive, but it works. It's been working for humans for thousands of years across hundreds of conflicts, against opponents who were bigger, stronger, and better armed than we were. A few skeptical clicks and hisses rippled through the crowd. Kendra's expression didn't change. Now then, she continued, clasping her hands behind her back, I need a volunteer for a basic defense drill. Who wants to help demonstrate? I've never seen so many hands shoot up so fast in my entire teaching career. Thoraxians, Keltharians, Draugars, Viridians, even a few normally shy species practically leaping out of their seats for the chance. It was like watching carnivores spot injured prey. Kendra's eyes scanned the crowd, and I swear I saw something flicker in her expression, just for a microsecond. Not fear, not nervousness. Something else, something calculating. Then that easy smile returned, the one that seemed friendly and warm but somehow never quite reached her eyes properly. How about you? She pointed directly at Grexel, who'd been waving all four arms like he was trying to signal a distant spacecraft. You look enthusiastic. Grexel practically vaulted over 3 rows of cadets to reach the mat. He was massive up close, easily 2.3 meters tall, exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights, mandibles clicking with excitement, his forearms flexed in sequence, showing off muscle groups that could probably bend steel plating. Next to him, Kendra looked like a child's toy, fragile and breakable. "Thank you for volunteering," she said politely. "What's your name?" "Grexel, ma'am. Thoraxian Defense Corps, second-year cadet." His voice buzzed with barely contained energy. "I'm trained in Karthak grappling, 6 years experience." "Excellent. Experience is good." Kendra stepped back slightly, giving him space. "All right, Grexel. Here's what I want you to do. Grab my shoulders with 2 of your arms. Standard restraint position. Use whatever force feels natural to you. Don't hold back on my account. Can you do that?" Grexel's mandibles spread wide in what passed for a thoraxian grin. "Absolutely, ma'am." The entire arena leaned forward. This was it. The moment we'd all been waiting for. Grexel versus the human instructor. Strength versus whatever Earth had to offer. 4 arms versus 2. I noticed something then that I didn't understand until much later. Kendra's smile had changed. Still present, still polite, but her eyes had gone flat, distant, professional. It was the expression of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before and knew exactly how it would end. That should have been my second warning, but I was too busy watching Grexel position himself, too focused on the spectacle, too convinced of what I thought I knew about combat and strength and the natural order of things. Sometimes the universe really enjoys proving you wrong, and it was about to do exactly that. Grexel positioned himself in front of Kendra, rolling his shoulders, all 4 of them in that pre-combat warm-up thoraxians do before a fight. He was taking this seriously. I'll give him credit for that. His primary arms reached forward, aiming for her shoulders like she'd instructed, while his secondary arms remained coiled at his sides, ready to strike or defend. Classic thoraxian combat stance, textbook perfect. "Good," Kendra said, her voice still carrying that maddeningly calm quality, like she was teaching basic mathematics instead of standing in grabbing range of a species that could crack hull plating with their bare hands. "Now go ahead. Grab my shoulders. Firm grip. Don't worry about hurting me." Grexel's primary hands clamped down on her shoulders. I could see his exoskeleton fingers tighten. Not enough to injure, but definitely enough to immobilize a human. He outweighed her by at least 80 kilograms, had 4 times her limb count, and came from a world where the local fauna could shred starship armor. This should have been over before it started. "Perfect," Kendra said, not even flinching under his grip. "Now class, pay attention to what I'm about to explain. In Earth combat systems, we operate on a principle that bigger and stronger opponents are the norm, not the exception. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, yes, but also as prey for things much larger than us. So we learned to fight smart, not hard." She gestured with her left hand, Grexel's grip still firm on her shoulders. "When someone grabs you like this, your instinct might be to pull away, to use strength against strength. That's inefficient. Instead, you identify the leverage points. In this case, Grexel's arms are extended, which means his elbows are locked, his center of gravity is forward, and his weight distribution is about 65% on his front legs." A few cadets leaned in, actually interested now despite themselves. Kendra continued, her tone still conversational, still relaxed, like she was discussing weather patterns. "The human approach is simple. We don't fight the grab, we use it. His grip becomes an anchor point. His forward stance becomes momentum we can redirect. His size becomes a disadvantage because the bigger they are, well, you know the rest." She shifted her weight slightly, just a tiny adjustment that probably looked like nothing to most of the cadets. "The technique I'm about to demonstrate is called Taio Toshi, in one of Earth's traditional combat systems. It means body drop. Watch carefully, because this happens fast." Then she moved. I'm going to be honest here. I've replayed this moment in my head approximately 6,000 times since it happened, and I still can't fully describe what I saw. It was like watching reality glitch. 1 microsecond Kendra was standing there, Grexel's hands on her shoulders, stationary and controlled. The next microsecond she'd pivoted, her right arm threading under Grexel's primary arm, her hip positioned against his center mass, her left hand gripping his uniform somewhere near his thorax plating. Then physics decided to get involved. Kendra dropped her weight, pulled with her left hand, lifted with her right arm, and rotated her entire body in a motion so smooth it looked choreographed. Grexel, all 200 kilograms of chitinous muscle and exoskeleton, left the ground, not gradually, not with warning. Instantly, he went from vertical to airborne in the space between heartbeats. His secondary arms flailed, trying to catch something, anything. His mandibles spread wide in shock. His eyes, all 6 of them, registered an expression I'd never seen on a thoraxian before. pure confusion mixed with the sudden realization that gravity had betrayed him. He rotated horizontal, his back now parallel to the arena floor, suspended in midair for a fraction of a second that felt like an eternity. The entire arena held its collective breath. You could have heard a molecule drop. Then he hit the mat. The impact sounded like a cargo container falling off a loading dock. The reinforced training surface, rated for species up to 3 times human mass, compressed visibly under the force. Grexel's exoskeleton made a concerning cracking sound that probably wasn't structural but definitely wasn't pleasant. The air rushed out of his breathing spiracles with a wheeze that echoed through the suddenly silent arena. For maybe 5 full seconds nobody moved. Nobody spoke. We all just stared at Grexel, flat on his back, all 4 arms spread out like he was making snow angels, his mandibles opening and closing soundlessly as he tried to remember how breathing worked. Kendra stood over him, not even winded, her expression shifting from professional to concerned. "You okay?" she asked, offering her hand. Grexel's eyes focused on her slowly, like his brain was still processing what had just happened to his body. His mandibles clicked weakly, once, twice, then he reached up with one primary arm and took her hand. She pulled, and somehow, despite the size difference, despite the weight difference, she helped haul him to his feet. "That," Grexel said, his voice buzzing with a tremor I'd never heard from him before, "was not gentle." "No," Kendra agreed simply. "It wasn't. That's the point. Earth combat isn't gentle, it's efficient. We make it look gentle during training because we prefer our students conscious and uninjured. But the techniques themselves, they're designed to end fights fast." She turned to address the rest of the arena, which was still processing what they'd witnessed. "Anyone can learn this. It's not about strength. It's about understanding leverage, timing and body mechanics. Your species, your size, your gravity world, none of that matters once you understand the principles." Grexel stumbled back to his seat, his secondary arms supporting his primary arms, his entire posture radiating the physical memory of suddenly discovering what it felt like to fly without wings. The cadets around him shifted away slightly, like whatever had just happened to him might be contagious. Kendra clasped her hands behind her back again, scanning the crowd with those calm, flat eyes. "So," she said pleasantly, "who wants to volunteer next?" Not a single hand went up. The arena remained absolutely silent except for the environmental systems humming in the background and Grexel's spiracles still wheezing slightly as he recovered his dignity. Kendra's smile widened just a fraction. "No one? Come on, we've got 2 more hours of class time. Surely someone else wants to learn about basic defense drills." I saw her eyes land on a few particularly confident-looking cadets, saw them suddenly become very interested in their data pads, the floor, the ceiling, anywhere except meeting her gaze. Finally, from the back of the arena, a deep rumbling voice spoke up. "I'll volunteer." Everyone turned. Standing up from the last row was Vrix, a 3rd-year Caltharian cadet built like a mobile fortress. She came from a 2.3G world, had bones like Durasteel, and held the academy record for most consecutive sparring victories. Kendra's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, a subtle straightening, a slight widening of her stance. "Excellent," she said. "Come on down." As Vrix made her way to the mat, each footstep making the arena floor vibrate slightly, I finally found my voice. "Lieutenant Voss," I called out, "perhaps we should start with something less intensive." She glanced at me, and for just a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Amusement maybe, or pity. "Instructor Jack," she replied politely. "This is the less intensive option." "Yeah." That's when I knew we were all in serious trouble. Vrix descended from the upper seating with the kind of measured, deliberate movement that predators use when they've spotted prey but aren't worried about it escaping. Each step made the arena's structural supports groan slightly. She was 2.1 meters of solid muscle and bone density, her skin that characteristic gray-blue color Caltharians get from living under a red giant star. Her shoulders were broader than most species' entire torsos, and her hands, Emperor help us, her hands looked like they could crush concrete blocks for entertainment. The nervous energy in the arena had shifted. Cadets were still wary after watching Grexel get introduced to the concept of human-assisted flight, but now they were leaning forward, interested. Vrix wasn't some overconfident second year who'd spent more time bragging than training. She was the real deal. 17 consecutive sparring victories, certified in 4 combat disciplines, reflexes honed by growing up in 2.3 times standard gravity where everything, including falling down, could kill you. Kendra watched Vrix approach with that same calm expression, but I noticed her weight shift slightly, settling lower, more centered. Professional recognizing professional maybe. "Cadet Vrix," Kendra said as the Keltharian stepped onto the mat. "What would you like to work on today?" Vrix rolled her massive shoulders, the motion creating small popping sounds as joints settled. "With respect, Lieutenant, I didn't come down here for a demonstration. I want full contact sparring. Real combat, not training." A collective intake of breath rippled through the watching cadets. Full contact sparring meant no pulled punches, no gentle redirects, no safety protocols beyond the medical drone standing by. It meant someone was probably leaving on a stretcher. Kendra tilted her head slightly, studying Vrix with renewed interest. "You sure? Full contact with Earth combat methods can get intense." "I'm from Kelthar Prime," Vrix replied, her voice that deep rumble Keltharians get when they're serious. "Intense is what we call a relaxing afternoon." "Fair enough." Kendra stepped back, giving them both space. "But understand something first. Earth training has two modes, teaching mode and combat mode. Teaching mode is what I showed Grexel, Controlled explained. Safe. Combat mode is what human soldiers use when they're trying to survive. Once we switch to combat mode, I don't hold back. Neither should you. We stop when someone taps out, loses consciousness, or I decide you've had enough." "Agree." Vrix's expression shifted into what passed for a Keltharian smile, showing rows of flat grinding teeth that could probably chew through hull plating. "Agree." "Good." Kendra moved to the center of the mat, settling into a stance that looked deceptively relaxed, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at her sides, weight balanced. "Whenever you're ready." Vrix didn't waste time with posturing. She charged. Now, I've seen Keltharian charges before. They're devastating, brutal applications of mass times velocity, designed to overwhelm opponents before they can react. Vrix covered the 5 meters between them in under a second, her shoulder lowered, aiming to drive Kendra straight into the arena wall like a biological battering ram. Kendra moved at the last possible microsecond. Not backward, not to the side. She angled, just slightly, maybe 30 degrees, her hands coming up to contact Vrix's shoulder and hip. Then she pushed, not against Vrix's momentum but perpendicular to it, redirecting rather than blocking. Vrix's charge carried her past Kendra's position, but she adapted instantly, planting her foot, pivoting with the kind of agility that shouldn't be possible for someone her size. She came around with a backhand strike that would have decapitated most species. Kendra ducked under it, stepped inside Vrix's reach and drove an elbow into the Keltharian's ribs. Not the thick bone plating on the front, but the side, where the muscle groups connected. Vrix grunted, genuine surprise in the sound, and brought her other arm down in a hammer blow. This one connected. Kendra crossed her arms to block, and the impact drove her down, her knees bending, absorbing the force. But she didn't fall, didn't collapse. She compressed like a spring, then exploded upward, driving her shoulder into Vrix's chin. The Keltharian's head snapped back. First blood, metaphorically speaking. They separated, circled. The arena had gone absolutely silent again. This wasn't like Grexel's demonstration. This was an actual fight between trained combatants. And the human wasn't losing. Vrix came in again, more cautious now, leading with quick jabs to test Kendra's defense. Kendra blocked, deflected, absorbed hits on her forearms that made impacts sound like someone slapping meat. Each hit should have fractured bones, but Kendra kept moving, kept responding. Her counterstrikes targeted joints, nerve clusters, pressure points. She went for Vrix's knee, her elbow, the side of her neck, surgical precision aimed at weaknesses. But Vrix was experienced enough to protect those areas, good enough to adapt her guard. They exchanged combinations, strike and counterstrike, block and riposte. Kendra took hits that made me wince, solid connections that should have dropped her, a punch to the ribs that I heard crack from my position, a strike to her shoulder that visibly dislocated something before she rolled it back into place without breaking rhythm. "She's not human," someone whispered behind me. "She can't be human," but she was. That was the terrifying part. This wasn't augmentation, wasn't genetic modification, wasn't combat drugs or neural enhancements. This was just training, technique, and the kind of pain tolerance that came from a species that evolved, knowing they weren't the biggest, strongest, or fastest thing in their environment. Vrix pressed harder, using her size advantage, trying to corner Kendra against the arena wall. She landed a solid hit to Kendra's jaw that should have knocked her unconscious. Kendra's head snapped to the side. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, and then she smiled. That's when I knew Vrix was in trouble. Kendra stopped moving defensively. She pressed forward, inside Vrix's reach, too close for the Keltharian to use her power effectively. Her strikes came faster, elbows, knees, Headbutts, using every part of her body as a weapon. She targeted the same spots repeatedly, wearing down Vrix's defense through accumulated damage. Vrix threw a desperate haymaker, putting everything behind it. Kendra didn't dodge. She stepped into it, closer than safety allowed, and the punch glanced off her shoulder instead of her head. Then she hooked her right arm under Vrix's extended arm, planted her foot, and dropped her entire body weight. The throw was different from what she'd done to Grexel. This one was lower, harder, designed to control someone heavier. Kendra's hip drove into Vrix's center mass, her leverage bypassing the Keltherian's strength entirely. Vrix left the ground, horizontal spinning, but Kendra didn't let go. She held on, rode the throwdown and drove Vrix into the mat with combined momentum, gravity and approximately 3,000 years of refined human combat technique. The impact was catastrophic. Vrix hit the reinforced surface hard enough that she bounced slightly before settling. Then her momentum carried her sliding, her body mass and velocity scraping across the arena floor. The reinforced material, rated for high-gravity species, designed to withstand punishment, began to gouge. Not scratch. Gouge. Deep furrows appeared in the surface as Vrix's body carved trenches through material that was supposed to be nearly indestructible. She slid 4 meters before friction finally stopped her. The arena held its breath for the second time that day. Vrix lay there, motionless for perhaps 3 seconds. Then she moved, slowly, pushing herself up to her hands and knees. Her breathing was labored, her skin showing the deep purple color Keltherians get when they're in pain. She looked up at Kendra, who stood at the impact point, breathing hard but still upright. Still ready. I yield, Vrix said quietly. Kendra nodded, moved to help her up. The medical drones swarmed, scanning for injuries. Vrix waved them off, pride still intact even if her body wasn't. That last move, Vrix said, her voice rough. What do you call it? Uchimata with ground commitment, Kendra replied. Inner thigh throw, modified for opponents with lower center of gravity. It's one of the basics. Basics, Vrix repeated, shaking her head slowly. Right, basics. She limped off the mat, leaving behind those gouges in the arena floor like scars. Permanent reminders of what happened when you underestimated human combat training. Kendra turned back to the crowd, wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. Anyone else? This time, nobody laughed. The silence stretched for maybe 30 seconds before movement in the front row caught my attention. Kale stood up, slow and deliberate, his scales catching the arena lights in that iridescent way Drogar physiology does when their combat hormones activate. 3 years undefeated, 17 certified combat systems. The Academy champion, the cadet every instructor pointed to as an example of what peak performance looked like. He was taller than Kendra by half a meter, built with that lean, flexible strength Drogars developed from their arboreal ancestry. His limbs were longer, his reach ridiculous, and his reaction time clocked at 0.04 seconds, faster than most species' nervous systems could even process a threat. He'd won 43 consecutive matches, most of them ending in under a minute. Kale walked to the mat without the bravado Grexel had shown or the aggressive confidence Vrix had demonstrated. He moved with quiet competence, the kind that came from knowing exactly how dangerous you were and not needing to prove it to anyone. Lieutenant Voss, he said, his voice that smooth baritone Drogars got when they were being formal. Permission to spar. Kendra studied him for a moment and I saw something pass between them. Recognition. Maybe. The kind of understanding that happened when two actual fighters acknowledged each other. Permission granted. What's your name, cadet? Kale Threnix, ma'am. 4th year combat specialization. You're the Academy champion. Not a question, a statement. Yes, ma'am. Then, let's make this interesting. Kendra rolled her shoulders, working out the stiffness from her match with Vrix. Show me what you've got. They both moved to the center of the mat and bowed. Kale's bow was deep, respectful. The gesture of someone who'd seen enough to know that underestimating an opponent was the fastest way to lose. Kendra's bow matched his, equally respectful. Then they settled into their stances. Kale's was textbook perfect, a modified Kelvin guard that kept his center protected while maximizing his reach advantage. His hands were up, loose, ready to strike or defend. His tail, that muscular counterbalance Drogars used for stability, swept slowly behind him. The match started without announcement. Kale moved first, testing Kendra's defense with a quick jab, his superior reach letting him strike from outside her counter range. She slipped it, minimal movement, just enough to let it pass. He followed with a low kick, probing her stance. She checked it, absorbed the impact on her shin. They circled, measuring distance, timing, each other's rhythm. Kale's second combination came faster. Jab, cross, hook, all flowing together with the kind of technical precision that took years to develop. Two of them landed, solid hits to Kendra's guard that drove her back a step. He pressed forward, maintaining pressure, using his reach to keep her at the edge of her effective range. Kendra took the hits, her forearms absorbing impacts that echoed through the arena. But she wasn't just defending. Her eyes tracked every movement, every shift of Kale's weight, every telegraph in his shoulder before a strike. She was reading him, downloading his patterns like software. Kale spun low, his tail whipping around for a sweep designed to take her legs out. Kendra jumped it, barely, landed and immediately had to block a follow-up elbow. The strike got through, caught her on the temple. Her head rocked back, but she stayed conscious, stayed moving. She's adapting, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. The cadet next to me, a Viridian with good audio sensors, clicked in agreement. She's letting him hit her so she can learn his timing. It was true. Every exchange, Kendra's responses got sharper, more precise. She started slipping punches by smaller margins, blocking with less wasted movement, finding gaps in Kale's combinations that hadn't been there before. She was learning him in real time, turning the fight itself into a training session. Kale noticed too. His stance shifted, became more cautious. He stopped pressing quite so hard, started mixing up his rhythm to prevent her from predicting. This was high-level fighting now, chess at combat speed, both opponents analyzing and counter-analyzing simultaneously. They exchanged strikes for another minute, the pace intensifying. Kale landed a solid kick to Kendra's ribs that made her grunt, actual pain breaking through her control. She retaliated with a punch to his jaw that snapped his head sideways, his scales rippling from the impact. Both were breathing hard now, both showing damage. Then Kale set up his signature move. I'd seen it 43 times in competition, seen it end matches against opponents who should have been able to counter it. It was a spinning back fist that used his tail for balance and momentum, generating rotational force that hit like a plasma cannon. The setup was subtle, a slight weight shift to his front leg, a fractional drop of his right shoulder. Kendra saw it coming. I know she did because her eyes tracked the setup, recognized the telegraph. What she did next violated every combat instructor's basic survival rule. She didn't block it. She didn't dodge it. She moved into it. Kale committed to the spin, his body rotating, his back fist coming around with all his mass and speed behind it. Kendra stepped forward, closing distance that should have been safety margin, getting inside the arc where the strike would land with maximum force. But she didn't just move into range. She moved into his rotation, matching his spin, her left hand coming up to contact his striking arm, not to block but to guide. Her right hand found his opposite shoulder, and suddenly she wasn't opposing his momentum, she was joining it, becoming part of his rotation. Kale's eyes went wide as his balance disappeared. The spin that should have ended the match became a liability, his own force working against him. His tail whipped around, trying to compensate, but Kendra was already there, her leg hooking behind his, her body weight driving sideways. The throw happened in the space between heartbeats. Kale went from spinning strike to horizontal to falling, all his technique and experience suddenly useless because his feet weren't touching the ground and gravity had sided with the human. He managed to twist midair, dragar agility trying to convert the fall into a recovery roll. Almost worked too. He hit the mat in a controlled position, started to push back up. Then Kendra landed on him. Not a jump, not a strike. She'd maintained contact through the entire throw, followed him down, and the moment he touched the mat she was there, her knee driving into his spine, her hands controlling his arms, her weight pinning him in a position where his strength and reach meant absolutely nothing. Kale struggled for maybe 2 seconds before he realized the position was unbreakable. His tail slapped the mat 3 times, the universal tap-out signal. Kendra, released immediately, rolled off, offered her hand. Kale took it, let her help him up, his expression showing the kind of respect that only came from getting completely dismantled by someone better. That counter, he said, breathing hard. I've never seen anyone move into the spin like that. It's risky, Kendra admitted. Timing has to be perfect or you eat the full force of the strike. But if you read the setup correctly, you can use the opponent's commitment against them. Kale nodded slowly, processing. 17 combat systems. Not one of them taught me that. That's because most combat systems assume you'll be the aggressor or the defender, Kendra said. Earth systems assume you'll be whatever the situation requires, including bait. She turned to face the arena, her gaze sweeping across cadets who'd gone from mocking to silent to genuinely intimidated. Anyone else want to learn today? This time, the silence was different. Not shocked, Not fearful, thoughtful, calculating. The kind of quiet that happened when people realized they'd been completely wrong about something important and were busy recalibrating their entire worldview. From the back row, a small voice called out, "Lieutenant, can you teach us that counter move?" Kendra smiled, and for the first time that day it reached her eyes properly. "That's what I'm here for, Cadet. That's exactly what I'm here for." But Kendra wasn't done yet. She raised her hand, stopping the eager cadet mid-question. "Before we break down technique," she said, her voice still steady despite the 3 consecutive fights, "I want to demonstrate one more concept. The difference between training execution and combat execution." She looked at Kale, who was still catching his breath. "You up for one more round? Short one, I promise." Kale hesitated, scales rippling with uncertainty, but pride won out over self-preservation. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. This time I want you to come at me full force. No testing, no strategy. Just commit to taking me down as fast as possible. Can you do that?" Kale nodded, settling back into his stance. His tail swept once, twice, building focus. "Whenever you're ready," Kendra said, positioning herself in the exact center of the mat. Kale exploded forward, all hesitation gone. He closed the distance in 3 bounding steps, his longer limbs eating up space, and launched a combination designed to overwhelm. High strike, low strike, feint, grab. He was going for a takedown, using his weight advantage to bring the fight to the ground where he could control it. Kendra moved like water, like she'd been doing this exact scenario 1,000 times before. She slipped the high strike, jammed the low strike with her knee, ignored the feint completely, and when Kyle committed to the grab she was already turning, her right arm hooked under his, her left hand gripped his uniform at the chest, and her hip positioned against his center mass. "This," she said, her voice cutting through the motion, "is Soyo Nage." She lifted. Kale went up and over her shoulder in a textbook shoulder throw, the kind she'd demonstrated in that training footage we'd all laughed at 3 weeks ago. But this time something was different. She didn't guide him down gently. She didn't control the descent for safety. She drove. Kendra dropped her entire body weight, adding her mass to his using gravity as a weapon. Her legs coiled, then exploded downward, amplifying the force. Every muscle group fired in sequence, channeling energy from her core through her shoulders into Kale's body. 3,000 years of human combat evolution, refined through countless wars against countless enemies, focused into a single point of impact. Kyle hit the arena floor like a meteor strike. The sound was wrong. Not the usual thud of body hitting mat, but something deeper, sharper, structural, the kind of sound that makes engineers wake up in cold sweats. The impact point spiderweb. Fracture lines radiated outward from where Kale's back made contact, spreading like lightning across the reinforced surface. The material, rated for 5G world species, designed to absorb punishment from combatants, 3 times Kendra's mass, simply failed, not catastrophically, not completely, but undeniably. Chunks of the surface layer popped upward from the stress. The fractures spread 2 meters in every direction before finally stopping. Dust particles hung in the air, caught in the arena lights, making the whole scene look surreal. Alarms screamed. Emergency protocols activated instantly. The arena's safety systems, designed for worst-case scenarios we'd never actually expected to see, lit up the control panels like a holiday display. Structural integrity warnings flashed red. Medical alert priority 1 blared through the speakers. Kale didn't move. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but present, his body completely limp. Kendra stood over him, her chest heaving, sweat soaking through her gray shirt, but still upright, still steady. She dropped to one knee immediately, fingers going to Kale's neck, checking his pulse. "Medical, now," she called out, her voice sharp with command authority. The drone swarmed before she finished speaking, scanners sweeping over Kale's unconscious form, stabilization fields activating. One of them projected a holographic readout. Kale's vital signs strong despite the impact. No spinal damage, concussion likely but manageable. Overall prognosis good. Kendra stayed there, kneeling in the center of the fractured floor, one hand on Kale's shoulder, watching the medical readouts until she was satisfied he was stable. Only then did she stand. Only then did she seem to notice the spreading silence, the shocked faces, the fact that she'd just broken the Academy's combat arena. She looked down at the damage, at the cracks radiating from the impact point, and for just a moment, something like regret crossed her face. "I probably should have warned you about the floor ratings," she said quietly. "Earth training facilities use reinforced concrete rated for 10G impacts. We've had a few thousand years to learn what happens when you don't over-engineer for human combat applications. The medical drones began lifting Kyle onto a floating stretcher, their movements efficient and practiced. His eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused but aware. "Did I tap out?" he mumbled. "You went to sleep," Kendra replied gently. "Different outcome."
"Oh,
"That's new." Then his eyes closed again as the medical team transported him toward the arena's medbay. Kendra turned to face the rest of us, 200 cadets and one completely shell-shocked instructor, all staring at her like she'd just demonstrated casual violation of physics. She brushed dust off her pants, rolled her shoulders one more time, and that easy smile returned. "So," she said conversationally, as if she hadn't just created a permanent scar in Academy property and sent our champion to medical. "Still think Earth training looks easy?" The stunned silence lasted maybe 5 seconds before the entire arena erupted. Not with laughter this time, with questions, dozens of voices overlapping in a dozen languages, cadets shouting over each other, demanding explanations, asking how, why, what kind of physics allowed a human from a 1G world to break a floor rated for 5G impacts. Kendra raised both hands, waiting for quiet. It took longer than it should have. The cadets, too wired on adrenaline and shock to settle quickly. Eventually the noise died down to anxious murmuring. "I know you have questions," she said, her voice carrying easily now that we'd all learned to actually listen. "The short answer is this. Humans spent millions of years as both predator and prey. We hunted, yes, but we were also hunted by things bigger than us, stronger than us, faster than us, better armed than us. Cats with claws like knives, reptiles with jaws that could crush bone, bears that outweighed us 5 to 1. She gestured to the fractured floor. "We survived because we learned to punch above our weight class. We couldn't outrun predators, so we outlasted them. We couldn't outmuscle them, so we outthought them. Every technique you saw today, every throw, every strike, every counter, comes from species memory of fighting things that should have killed us but didn't because we refused to fight fair." A Thoraxian cadet, not Grexel but one of his friends, raised a shaking hand. "But the training footage we saw, it looked so gentle, so controlled." "It was," Kendrick confirmed. "That's the foundation. The basics. We teach it gently because we need our students conscious and functional, but those basics scale up. That gentle hip throw becomes what you just saw. That controlled wrist lock becomes a shattered joint. That light sparring becomes combat that ends lives." She walked to the edge of the fractured zone, her boots crunching on displaced material. "You want to know what kind of death world physics allows this? Earth isn't a death world by your classifications. It's rated garden class, moderate danger, comfortable living conditions. But here's what your classifications miss. Earth didn't need mega predators or toxic atmospheres or crushing gravity to be dangerous. It had humans, and humans spent their entire evolutionary history teaching each other increasingly efficient ways to kill." The arena had gone quiet again, but this silence was different. Contemplative, maybe a little scared. "The training you mocked," Kendra continued, "that's foundation level, the stuff we teach to children. I haven't shown you advanced human combat systems yet, haven't demonstrated weapon integration, haven't covered environmental adaptation, haven't touched tactical doctrine developed through 10,000 years of warfare." She paused, let that sink in. "And honestly, I'm not sure this facility is rated for advanced demonstrations." Someone laughed nervously. No one else joined in. "So yeah, that's how Lieutenant Kendra Voss changed everything we thought we knew about combat training in a single 2-hour session. The Academy had to replace Arena 3's entire floor, cost them a fortune, and the maintenance crew still complains about it. Kyle recovered fine, by the way, even asked Kendra to train him personally. She agreed, though she made him sign about 40 liability waivers first. Me, I stopped being so confident about what I thought I knew. 16 cycles of teaching experience didn't mean much when a human from a garden world could casually demonstrate that strength isn't everything, that size doesn't guarantee victory, and that the most dangerous opponent is the one who spent millions of years learning to survive against impossible odds. Earth's training isn't easy. It's efficient. Humans aren't weak, they're optimized, and now, 3 cycles later, every major military academy in the galaxy has quietly updated their combat curricula to include human methodology. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. If humans consider floor-breaking throws basic training, absolutely nobody wants to discover what they consider advanced. I certainly don't. Once was enough, thanks.